Thank you. Good evening, and welcome to the Curriculum Evaluation Committee meeting on Monday, August 16th, 2021. Oh, I'm sorry. This is the original agenda. I apologize. This meeting was postponed from August 16th. Today is Thursday, August 19th. And we will call the meeting to order. Sharon Giglio is present. Also, we have standing in for Ray Garino, Heather Raymond, here, present. And also joining us this evening is Paula Johnson as a guest. And we also have in attendance Dr. Garth McKinney and Dr. Kimberly Sarfi. So we have two items on the agenda this evening. First is our Pdmp and Tdec updates. This is primarily regarding the professional development master plan for the district going forward through 2021 to 2026. So, all right, if the admins would like to go ahead and present.
Sure, thank you. So the first number of updates are, just so the committee knows, is from the Professional Development Master Plan. That's a joint labor management committee made up of teachers, administrators, both mutually assigned by the administration and the union. And then the subcommittee of that is the Teacher Development and Evaluation Committee, which is also made up joint labor by parties from both sides. So in order for these items to come to you this evening, they've been approved by the Tdec, the subcommittee, then approved by the Pdmp Master Plan Committee, and now coming to the board for approval so we can use them during this school year. So the first agenda item is we have a number of social workers in the district, but we didn't have a social worker rubric to evaluate them against. Previously, we've been using the guidance counselor rubric, but their job is a little different. So a subgroup of social workers, along with reps from the Tdec committee, put together this rubric. Scott Jakerith and a number of other social workers from the district presented it. It was approved by the Tdec committee, approved by the Pdmp, and is included in your packet this evening. Would it be helpful to go through all the items, or do you want to go one at a time?
So my impression was the things in red highlights are what have been changed. Other items were from previous versions of the same document, correct?
So just going by the social worker rubric, this document is brand new. I haven't gotten to the plan itself yet.
So, we're just only discuss. All right, okay. Then yes, I would like you to kind of go over this and feed us some info.
So there are a couple of sections in here. The first one talks about the social workers work with students. The second part talks to the services they deliver to families and communities. And then the last part, actually two parts, how they help and support our school and district personnel. And then at the end is professional responsibilities, which is fairly similar to the other sections that are in the, I want to say 9 to 10 other rubrics that we have in the district. So this would be a new rubric for this year, designed for the number of social workers in the district.
Does anyone from the committee have any questions? Yes, Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. I was curious about actually the very last item on the rubric, which is licensure, because this is one of the critical need areas in the state. So there's alternate paths to certification, or to, I guess, to meet the criteria to be hired. So how does that work for people who are working towards their licensure? Because I'm going off of, like, I don't know what I don't know about licensure. So I'm curious about the process for that. If we hire someone due to the critical need who doesn't hold a license, how do they go about getting one? And is there a time frame that they're allowed to do that?
So as you know, the requirements for certification are vast and large, and I don't have them all with me,
Okay.
but the majority of the social workers we have are credentialed. And in speaking to Scott Jakewith, they have to have a number of hours from like the National Association of Social Workers that meet the certain criteria, and those have to be granted by them that would apply for recertification. We've had times in the past where they would participate in like a local event, but they couldn't count those hours because it doesn't meet the criteria for the national piece. So to your question around people that are looking to get certified, they would work with our peer coaches, Diane Vino, go on all plans, work with the state, and you have to file a beginning of the year plan, tell the state what you're going to do to meet the competencies, and then file an end of year plan showing that you met all the competencies, and then they would review it and grant you certification.
Okay, thank you. I think I was confused about the difference between licensure and certification, because, you know, teachers get certified, but you can have an LCSW, which is a licensed person who's able to provide mental health services. So I'm still confused about it, but as long as there's a process with Diane Vino, I'm comfortable with that. Thank you.
Do you have any questions, Ms. Gilio? No? So this rubric is what we're using for professional evaluations, correct? And how frequently will we be completing the evaluations?
So most of our evaluations are done on a 3-year cycle. So when you come to your summative evaluation at the end of your 3-year cycle, this is the rubric that you would be evaluated against.
Okay.
And then many observations on the other times.
And the team that kind of signed off on this had current district social workers and admins and worked together collaboratively. And I guess my last question is, I know there was some language in the contract that was being edited. Is the word social worker still the right word for this particular position? Like as compared to school counselors, guidance, this is still the right title for this position?
Yes, the clause that's in the teacher's contract, I believe this is accurate, yep, but we can double check.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I guess did you want us to go through these? I thought my impression was that this was intended to do as a whole. So do you want to go on through the next line item, the effective teacher rubric? All right, let's go. We're going to be at letter B, effective teacher rubric.
So previously to last year, to COVID, we had an effective teacher rubric. So this is the rubric that we had before, but we had a team of teachers work with some ELL teachers and update the language here. Sorry for the poorly highlighted sections, but I'll just kind of speak to those. This would be a piece that we would hope be in accordance with the Department of Justice and what they're asking us to do. So looking at page 1, planning and delivery, that whole section across section A, those are new sections. Section B, the highlighted sections in those two boxes there for 4 and 3. New wording in connections for 4 and 3, and across the row for clarity. Turning the page, there's an update with differentiation. And then on the 3rd page, parent communication. And those are the main revisions from the ELL teachers working with the Tdec committee who approved it, then Pdmp. Should this be approved by the board, the next step would be to share it with a DOJ, get their feedback, and it could be a possibility that this bounces back a few times when they ask for further revisions regarding English language learners and being in the general teacher rubric.
And so the yellow, just to make sure I'm reading this correctly, the yellow is added language or language that can be stricken? So it's added language to the document.
This is a highlighter version of the red line, so
All right.
that would be the changes, yep.
Thank you. Did this kind of get passed through the Department of Justice before, when they were looking at our documentation? Did we edit this, or did they edit this when they gave the ruling?
So we edited this around the end of June, and the final document was done in July. So we've been exchanging communications back and forth. So this was current at one point, but it's possible, they're going to ask for more, another section, or revise it further. So it'll be our first draft.
Okay. Any questions from the committee? No? Ms. Johnson? No? Okay, thank you very much. All right, the next item is there a secondary portion to this with the EL descriptors, or is that just kind of, okay. Let's see, so I've got self-assessment within the Pdmp.
So if you keep the last document out that we had, the effective teacher rubric. So this whole process is maybe 5 or 6 years old now. When we first started the process, it was new to teachers, the rubrics. So as an entry point, we asked teachers, when you come to your summative evaluation on the third year cycle, when you're going to get evaluated on the whole rubric, it was suggested that you do a self-evaluation on yourself by filling out the rubric and then sharing it with your administrator during the conference. So it's only been suggested for that amount of time. Both committees are now at the point that after 5 years, most people should know the rubric, know the expectations, and should be at a place to fill out a self-evaluation and engage in a professional dialogue with the administrators. So the recommendation from both groups is that that be mandatory going forward, that we want people to come in, reflect on your practice, talk about your strengths and weaknesses, what are your goals going forward, and then have that be part of the conversation. Not as a gotcha, but it should be an entry point. Teachers do that with kids all the time. This is what you're working on. This is what you're doing well. So both committees want to make that a recommendation going forward.
Excellent. And is that as you enter into the district, that is at the 3-year mark now or at the 5-year mark?
Anytime somebody's getting their summit evaluation, it's a little different if you're a new teacher versus a contract teacher or a continuing teacher. But whenever you're getting a summative evaluation, the expectation would be you bring the completed self-evaluation.
Excellent. All right. Any questions from the committee? No? All right. Let's go ahead and move forward. We are at digital binders.
So over the past year, our technology skills have gotten much stronger. So I don't know, I didn't bring one here, but typically people's binders for certification are large documents and they're priceless. Can't lose them. It's very nerve-wracking. They leave them for the administrators, they review them, and they come back and want to get them back. The committee felt that after going through COVID, we already have them in Word documents, that we could put them into Google and teachers could document their professional learning in a digital binder and just keep everything online with Google. So we can help with the templates. They can already use the stuff they're doing in the classroom, lesson plans, student work, upload it on there. So the recommendation is to start grandfathering people into digital binders and do away with these large binders that usually at points in the year you see taking over principals' offices. So that's also a recommendation from both committees to include in the Pdmp going forward, that we move to digital binders and just make it easier for folks to store their work, present their work, and not have the worries of losing the binder, which is really their certification.
Excellent. Is eventually, do they have the option of a digital binder, or is it, as we onboard more people, it will be exclusively a digital binder?
Over time, we'd just like to get to a digital place. Yeah, so we're going to grandfather people over as they come into their first cycle, so that, make them transition from paper to going online years 2 and 3, but when you come to year 1, switch over.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Yes, Ms. Johnson?
So when they're on the digital binder, and this goes to the state, so they see all their hours, continuing education hours?
All their plans come to district office and are under review by the assistant superintendents, and we
Okay.
sign off.
Okay, so that's all this is. This doesn't, because it's, does any of this go towards their continuing hours on the paperwork to go? That's going to be in Google, so they can send it just right up to the state too, if they do any continuing education hours?
I like the way you're thinking, but unfortunately, it doesn't work that way with the state. We have to do a couple other things that are more technical, but
Gee, I can do mine with the state to renew my license and everything. It's all online now.
so under the master plan, basically the state is saying if the people that are licensed and credentialed meet the criteria outlined in the master plan, the district renews their licenses.
Okay.
So we go into the system, we promote them, renew them, and then the state on the other end clicks it, and then they're renewed for another 3 years.
Okay, so the district does that to help them. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. And hopefully, eventually, everything will move a little more digital and paperless if we can, especially when you're talking about state filings. So I appreciate that. All right. So the para verification form.
So in the previous version of the Pdmp, it was less than half a page, and there was no actionable things for paras to do if they wanted to get recertified. So this form was created to help them through the steps of recertification. So if they accrue 50 clock hours after their 3 years, they meet with their building administrator, they present their clock hours, they sign off there, the principal or administrator signs off. Then it comes to district office, we review their 50 clock hours, the para signs off, the assistant superintendent signs off, and then that para would be eligible for recertification. We go into the system, say that to the state, and the state in turn would say they're renewed for 3 years for their cycle.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions? Yep. Go, Ms. Gilio.
Are all paras certified?
Not all paras are certified yet.
Is it just something that they're offered? They don't necessarily have to be certified to do their job?
Yep, it's wonderfully confusing. There's para 1s and para 2s. Para 2s do have to get certified. Those are the ones that are usually in title schools, so they do have to meet that criteria. You could be a para 1 and not be certified and still be a para in the district. So
Thank you.
this is one of the things that we go over. We have a new para academy. We started it the year before COVID, and we're redoing it this year to go over things like this. I think this is one of the areas we have to look at with some of the ESSER funds to encourage folks to go get highly qualified or move into another kind of certification and what the incentives would be. So that's on the docket as well.
Yes, Ms. Raymond?
Thank you. Is this something that is able to be digital as well, or is this still, analog, physical copies that they have to have?
I would say it's a hybrid. It's actually a little bit of both. We do have some paras who are really astute and keep everything online, and we do have others that keep everything paper in binders. So it is something that we can work towards going digitally, but a lot of them are kind of just used to the same system of keeping the file, keeping all your 50 hours, then showing it to your administrator and moving it along. Yep.
Thanks.
That was a good point, actually. It seems like that would be something worth working towards, is getting it all in the database we can work on. If there was a form, that's a good idea.
I think we could start going in that direction this year. We're going to give all the paras a Chromebook, so everyone will have one. So if we can slowly start moving in that direction, it does make sense. So I'll bring that back to both committees.
And this is actually just, might be a remedial question for me. So it says documentation of 50 continuing education credits or clock hours. Does that mean hours working in the classroom? Is that what clock hour is?
They're both the same thing. Some people refer to them as CEUs, but it's really clock hours. They're one and the same. So just going by hours.
Thank you. All right. I guess, I'm guessing you're probably going to have something similar to say about the nurses form. So go ahead.
So what happened before, the nurses, school nurses used to be in another division at the State House, and then they moved them back over to under the Department of Ed. So now we certify their license in the school district. So this is the form that follows the same process as the others. They were all recertified 3 years ago, so they all just came due the end of June. So we made this form, they all go to Mr. Chopa's office, they all did the same process, but now we need to include it in the Pdmp going forward. And hopefully they don't switch it back to another credentialing office at the State House, and then we'll have to rescind the form. Or we keep it in just in case they bounce back, one or the other.
Excellent. Actually, so my only question on this was, were there nurses and paras on the Pdmp committee that are kind of aware of this change to funnel through?
There are some paras on the Pdmp committee. There are not school nurses on the Pdmp, but I worked through Gina Lopez, the head nurses, and they went over this at one of their meetings.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else have any questions? All right, so I guess it's time for a motion. So,
Madam Chair,
oh yes, go ahead.
could I just make one note? I didn't bring a print copy of the Pdmp. Could you just clarify the years on the front there?
It is 2021 through 2026. Is that accurate?
So my recommendation, and I don't think it was included in that, was that the committee wanted to have until the end of '21 for this current plan. And then we haven't had a chance to get feedback from the educators. We're in the midst of COVID and everything else. We want to get feedback, what's working, what's not. We have till the end of December. So we'll work from September to December to do that, and then come back if we need to either extend the current version, or if we're going to make changes, we would bring it back in December. We had hopes of doing some surveys with teachers and getting feedback, but the end of the year and people were just frankly tired. A lot of that work didn't happen. So if we can just agree that it ends on 21, and then we'll come in December with an update.
Okay, so you'd want it through the end of the calendar year, not through the end of the school year, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
believe
Actually,
that-
that actually is that was going to answer one of my questions that I was going to ask you. So,
I believe the previous version was from 2016 to 21.
correct.
Okay, so we're trying to keep that, but I think in the midst of all the changes, it got moved, so.
Just asking about that moving forward. When I noticed in the back here, they have calendars. Maybe I'm missing that one. There's calendars somewhere around here. Is that something that would be more efficient in the document to go through the end of the school year when you're planning for evaluation cycles, or is that not really relevant to this? If it was basically, if eventually, I mean, I think it seems appropriate to end it in 2021, since that's what you're requesting at this point in time. But if eventually this plan were to end at the end of a school year, instead of December, have it end in June with the fiscal year, would that ever be something that the committee would prefer?
I guess I'm trying to understand. So you're saying the alignment between the school year calendar and the master plan, should they be on the same?
Yes, I mean, I recognize right now you're only asking for us to approve it through the end of the year, which I think is appropriate. Moving forward, I don't know if would it be better to cycle it with the fiscal year?
Oh, that's an interesting one. We could ask the state about that, and if it's a 5-year piece, and whether you could go, like, it would be a 4 1/4 or something, like ended in August before it started the school year. What the committees are most interested in is that, obviously, we come to the board, get board approval for any changes so that we can use them in the upcoming school year. So it's a little, I can see the misalignment piece, but they know, many of the people have been on the committee since it started, know we need to come usually in August with an update so we can use them for the upcoming school year.
Did anyone else have any questions for anything in the large development plan document? No? Okay. It's interesting. My primary question was about the timeline on the front, so there you go. Good answer. So I would like to move to recommend to approve the Tdec updates as presented through the end of 2021.
Second?
All right, so I made the motion with a second by Ms. Gilio. And let's see, Ms. Raymond, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Gilio?
Aye.
Aye, and Jessica Brown votes aye. Motion passes. Okay. Moving on, thank you very much.
Do you want to know something exciting? You don't have to do roll call.
I like doing roll call. when it's only 3 of us. But thank you. All right, so moving right along, we are at the second major thing on our agenda, which is the contract for services with NHLI, which is the New Hampshire Learning Initiative. Dr. McKinney, would you like to give us an update on where we stand?
Sure. So we've been working with NHLI, the New Hampshire Learning Initiative, and they're great partners, both with us and a number of districts across the state, as well as the Department of Education. So this proposal includes 6 major areas. One is for competency-based education leadership across the district, assessment training for teachers. An exciting piece is a portrait of a learner or a portrait of a graduate, which that work had kind of started but needs to kind of move forward, particularly at the high school level for accreditation. There's new teacher training included in here. There's future learning pathways. So how do we connect kids through high school to career, college, and life skills and have a solid pathway across? And then the last part talks about the needs assessment. And in June, we did a number of surveys, and we have 4,600 responses from students, teachers, and community members. And I'm asking for the board's support to allow the district to engage with the students from the elementary, middle, and high school that completed the surveys, as well as the teachers at all 3 levels, and the 500 community people who responded, to get their input into what are the success criteria we want to see kids have when they leave the Nashua School District. So what is the profile of a graduate? And right now, many of the surveys, believe it or not, from all 3 parties, students, teachers, and parents, are all in alignment around the top 3 or 4 skills in terms of communication, collaboration, teamwork. There's a theme in there. So I want to have the opportunity to work with NHLI. This is an investment in our leadership team. So this is embedded learning. So they're going to come in a few weeks and meet with the leadership team, the principals and the APs, and talk about how they can help and support them. A large part of it is they call it School Retool. There are these little leadership hacks that principals and APs can do to help improve student learning. We've had probably 5 to 10 principals trained in that. They also do some great work with working with teacher teams around PLCs and looking at data, which is something I'm interested in, seeing how all kids are doing this year. The second part refers to meaningful assessment. So what are the assessments that we believe are of value? Not just a paper and pencil test or the test that you have to take, but really pushing kids to demonstrate their learning and be clear on the criteria for success. Not pop quizzes, no tricks, no surprises, but it's well laid out in advance. Another part of the survey, I already talked about the portrait of a learner, supporting our new teachers. I believe since March, the HR team did a count. We've hired over 75 teachers since March for next year. So what does it look like to come to Nashua, and how do we do things here? So it's an opportunity for them, basically concierge service at the building level, teaching new teachers and coming in the classroom and meeting with them. And I'm really interested in the future learning pathways. There's a lot of work going on across the state. There's some cool surveys that kids can do in terms of getting on board early in middle school. What are the areas you're interested in, and how do you take those classes of interest at the high school, and really being ready to get to a place where you already know where you want to go and what you want to do. I also think it's incumbent upon us to find ways to attract and retain people who want to stay in the school district and work in one capacity or another, teachers, paraprofessionals, across the board, because what's happening right now is a lot of musical chairs. There's only so many educators in the state. They're just moving around between the districts. We got to find ways of kids who are here or in our Careers in Ed program or over at RIV who can come here, maybe get a paid internship, get moved into another position and kind of move up the ranks. And then lastly, there was that piece around the needs assessment where a team of us put together a number of questions that tie into other things that have been in the district. There are questions in there around GPA, there are questions in there around class rank, there are questions around competencies, and these are directly from students and teachers themselves and parents and community members. So we want to have the opportunity to go through that. They've never done a survey like this before and never gotten the results they got back before. This is a high score, so I'm kind of proud of that. But I'm really invested in looking at the information that's in there and coming to consensus around. I've worked in other districts where it's in every school, every classroom. This is why what we do, because when kids graduate from high school, we want you to be able to do these things. And we know they're of value because if you can do these things, you're going on to college, career, and success. So, sorry, that's a long, short version of, a multi-page contract, but I hope that kind of gives an overview.
I appreciate that very much. I think that was very informative. Does anyone have any questions?
I do.
Go ahead, Ms. Giglio.
Looking at the schedule, I'm just wondering, how are we doing with getting subs lined up for this year so that these people can be free to work on these? I know that in the past it's been a problem. I'm sure it's not totally solved. But as a previous para who sometimes was called upon to cover classes when there weren't any subs coming in, I just think if we can have, if given, all of these meetings, if we can have subs who are going to actually follow the sub plan and do what the teachers have set up for them, we would be doing amazingly well. And I'm just hoping that maybe we're moving toward that.
So this is obviously a first draft. We're meeting with the principals and APs next week to go over this calendar. I did give them all the dates that we have in terms of early release days and in-service days. I have the same expectation that we're going to minimize disruptions to classroom learning and maximize teaching instruction. So all this could be subject to change. That wouldn't violate the contract from approval. That's just rescheduling. I'm certainly hoping that, certainly hoping that we can be fully staffed, paras all the way through. We got great news today that our first submission for the ESSER grant was substantially approved, which means we'll continue having permanent building subs. So the next piece after that is looking at a staffing agency, and hopefully they can help us recruit and retain and have more subs available. But we're also exploring, now that we have Google Classroom, do we always need subs? Could it look different? Could kids go to a library and work independently like at the high school? So we're trying to come up with some other creative solutions. But I've heard before from board members that, we don't want to pull teachers out of the class and just having kids doing nothing. So again, meeting with the principals and APs next week, we'll nail down the calendar and see what we can do in terms of making these meetings happen. And if it happens after school or it has to happen at a different time and compensate teachers, we could do that as well.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. Ms. Raymond?
I did, but Ms. Johnson had her hand up first.
Go ahead, Ms. Raymond, go ahead.
Oh, thanks. A lot of this seems to align with the NEASC goals and the NEASC work that Mr. Richards and Mr. Burns have been working on. So I was really pleased to see that. So yay. But I did have a question that has just flown out of my mind as we're talking about this. I've lost it. Oh, it was about finances. So is this planning to come from the Escher grant, like where, or was it part of our budget for this year?
So this would be an ESSER 2 submission. So approval of the board will allow us to submit it to the state, and then it took about 3 to 4 weeks for the last submission, so we'd wait and see what the response from the state would be. But under the current guidance, this would be an allowable activity under the guidance from the state.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Johnson, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. As I was looking through this, how come it says here middle school social studies team and middle school ELA team. Working standards teachers on the team will receive stipend for their participation. How come, is it just these two teams?
Can you tell me what page you're on?
6.
So they maybe already worked with the proposal through the coaches to say that we'll meet now and again, but we'll also meet after school and be paid accordingly, so.
So they get a stipend for meeting after school. Is that because it's over the contract hours?
Yeah, it shouldn't say a stipend, it should receive compensation.
And what is the typical hours in elementary school?
Hours of the school day or hours?
The school that the teachers are supposed to be there? How many hours do they?
I don't have that in front of me, and it's actually been a year since we've been on schedule. So the late schools are like from 7:45 to 3:30, and then the early schools, I want to say, are from 8:15 till about 2:30-ish, 2:45.
2:45? And the middle schools? I know the high schools are like 7:30 in the morning, something like that.
High schools are 7:15 to 2:03.
Okay. I'm giving you a test here, Dr. McKinney.
7:30 to 2:45 to middle school. And well, it was COVID. The hours were always moving. Time was irrelative. You were just in your pajamas
Time
all the
was
time.
nothing anymore. So
What's that?
I said time meant nothing anymore,
No,
you
it
know?
doesn't.
So the middle schools, well, did we get that answer?
Yep, 7:30 to 2:45.
7:30 to 2:45. Okay, and how long are the teachers, do they leave at 2:45 when the building cleans out, or are they there longer?
Per contract, they have to be there 15 minutes before the kids come and then 10 minutes after.
4 and
And they-
10 minutes.
Historically have been compensated $25 an hour for work outside the school day.
Okay.
I would hope for the board's support in moving that north of $25 an hour.
Is that with the new contract or just in general?
So it's a longer conversation. It's not exactly outlined in the contract. The feedback I get from teachers is $25 minus deductions is less than $20. So we are looking into a more comparable rate. So we have teachers engaging in professional development. So it's a hot
Right.
topic.
Right, because if you have to pay daycare.
A babysitter is, yeah. So we're working on that.
I have a little problem with that. I mean, I get it that taxes and everything are being taken out, but there's been a lot of families in this community that didn't work for the full year because they were home teaching their kids. So, you know, it's kind of flies in the face of reason when people are trying to get back on their feet right now. And jobs, they're trying to get back into work, and people took pay cuts this past year. So I'm not too thrilled with that. I believe that sometimes, I think the community should be brought into some of these things, and then, because it's tax dollars. Okay, I think that was basically my whole question on that. Thank you very much.
All right, so I had just a few questions. First of all, can you tell me what OGAP mathematics training is? Do you know what the OGAP stands for?
Ongoing assessment project. It's a framework for teachers in teaching math for the major operations or major concepts in math. So it's a series of formative assessments where teachers can see where the misunderstandings are for kids and say, you're at kind of this framework, I need you to move up to this level, and this is how I'm going to get you there. It's great PD. It was used in the districts previously. The feedback was it was a little laborious with the amount of assessments and data entry and collection, but it's probably the best PD that a teacher can have in math. The equivalent would be in literacy. We ask kids, and you hear about reading levels, so we kind of have a gold standard what level kids are reading on. This is the equivalent of a kind of a framework or leveling for math of saying how do you get from addition, subtraction, multiplication to division. That would be my short version of that. It's very good PD. Typically, a lot of elementary teachers come out with great literacy PD, not so great in math or are uncertain in math. This is certainly an area that would be very helpful.
And do you know if the OGAP math training, the assessments that they use, does it conflict with the mathematics curriculum we're using, like the Eureka Math or whatever levels they're at?
I would say no, because in the end, we do ask kids and accept multiple ways to get to an answer, not just one way. So it's about being effective, efficient problem solvers and having a method that you can use to get to the correct answer. So it's not confusing for kids. It's really a tool in the toolbox for teachers for assessing kids, but it's also the framework that's great PD for the teacher. So it's kind of a win-win. Because I think teachers struggle in math, like what am I supposed to do if a student can't do blank? You don't get better by just doing the same thing over and over again and getting it wrong. So it gives them some other avenues. So each formative assessment has a question bank and has other resources with it. So they get all of that as part of going to the OGAP training. They walk away with not only the PD, but resources.
Let's see. So my other question, I guess, goes back to surveying. So the surveys we took, and I think there's a lot of really valuable things in this, working with an HLI in here, and I do like the fact that it's very strategic in long-term, making sure people are have access to quality professional development. I have a little bit of a concern with how we surveyed students and surveying students moving forward. Are we surveying only the same group who have already taken the surveys, and will parents get an opportunity to preview those surveys moving forward? I guess that's my question. Will their parents have an option to either opt in, opt out, or preview the surveys?
So didn't have an intention of surveying again. You know, if the feedback is from the community, they want an opportunity to complete those surveys again, we could make them available. Really, the next part is taking the survey results and going to schools and having conversations with students and teachers and parents and doing focus groups and having conversations around the results. So if people wanted to participate, I would suggest they come to those. I want to hear from all the groups that are here, and particularly the community as well. What do we want for all our kids when they come out? So that's kind of where we are. We're at more of the analysis stage and then getting to kind of a group conversation, focus groups, and reviewing the results and gathering more input.
And how will we reach out to those focus groups?
Tara Kinsella, district office.
Okay. All right. So you won't be resurveying like at the end of this to find out where the people who previously took the survey, where they stand now? Is there like any evaluation process of what we think, or is this more of a work group, would you say, with the community for the early stages?
So I would think all our work is ongoing. If there's ongoing feedback that people want to present, I see it as our role to go and engage the community and get as much feedback, good, bad, or indifferent, and then put together all that and present it to the board and say, this is the recommendation going forward. So this is ongoing work for at least this school year. I think in the back they included a multi-year proposal as well. So that's kind of where we are right now.
And maybe I just missed it. Is there a place when, a place where the staff that is experiencing these initiatives, where they get to actually give feedback and say what they've learned, what they've taken away from the experience?
So most PD, we do a survey through Frontline, which is an online system where they register and give the feedback there, so we can review all the results. They're anonymous. But NHLI does a great job just talking with teachers and gathering anecdotal feedback as well. So we can collect all that and present it as well.
I would love to hear back how it goes at the end of the session this year to see if it's something we need to continue moving forward. All right. So the needs, so I guess this is just where I'm looking at this as out of order, and I do realize that I'm kind of a little bit stuck on this survey concept. So it's the page 11, but it's asking for a needs assessment. So is that going to be at the end of this cycle? Is that happening again? Or is that what you're saying, that needs assessment already took place?
So some of it already took place. You know, certainly we reserve the right if the results aren't, you know, all-inclusive or doesn't hit all the points that are listed in here, we certainly could do another survey. But a team of administrators and district personnel, along with NHLI, put those questions together. You know, it was the end of the year. It wasn't perfect, but I do think there's a large sum of information that's included in the results that we have an obligation to go look at and see what came out of it, and then go to focus groups at the school level and hear back further from those constituent groups.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone else have any comments or questions? Yes, Ms. Johnson?
Just a quick one. As I'm reading through the program, now where it says here, actively engage teachers in problem solving, analyzing student work, and small and whole group discussions. Is there anything in here that deals with the fact, in this whole program, that if students are failing, what exactly we're going to do in math, reading, you know, in any subject here, social studies? Is there a plan in this whole competency based with the New Hampshire Learning Initiative? Because I'm kind of reading through this and, you know, I'm seeing how the discussions are going, but it's not really hitting on anything, you know, that if we have students that fail.
So can you just refer to what page you're referring to?
I was on what page was I on here? Page 12. It says teachers develop deeper understanding of the mathematical concept. Introduce teachers to underlying research on student learning. Explore the model effective instructional practices. But as I read through this, you know, I understand the engaging and the problem solving, but where we look in any of this, that if we have students that are falling behind, how we're going to bring them up in this whole concept here. And I think that's the big piece that we're missing, because my biggest fear is that we don't know where our students are this year, coming in from last year with all the remote and the hybrid, and then finally back to school full-time. You know, it was like a juggling game last year where they were going to be, and I thank you, Dr. McKinney, for being on the forefront of bringing them back to school. But this is my biggest concern, is the fact that we don't have that piece in here, and that's a big piece. If we're going to be engaging in all this, it could take a year, it could take 2 years to really find out if any of these students are lacking and how far they are. You know, so that's what my biggest piece is. That's what I always look to see with all the assessments we do, and I always ask, where's that piece that we're going to take all this data that we talk about, and how are we going to apply it to these students that are struggling and falling behind? Because the one thing we don't want to do is have these students throw their hands up in the air and say, I can't do this. They're in high school and they drop out, or when they're younger, they don't want to come back to school because of the fear. That's what I would like to see in this NHLI initiative here, is how are we going to focus on this? This is my pet peeve, seeing kids failing in school and not being, and even when I was on the board the last time, because like I said, we had level 4, and level 4 was a dumping ground. And I hate to say it, but it really was level 4, because they were taking kids that had learning problems and with behavior problems and we had levels 1, 2, 3, and 4. And level 4 was gone, and then they changed the whole structure. It wasn't the leveling anymore. They changed the name of it. But no matter how you slice and dice it, we're still separating the kids, and I don't want to see these kids go through any more than what they have done in the last year. And I know you feel the same way. So this is why, I'm reaching out to you and saying, how are we going to correct this? We should have something right into this competency-based new initiative that we're talking about, so. Thank
I
you.
guess I would say two things to that. One, just because it's not outlined in here doesn't mean it's not coming. I think we have to come to agreements around what does it look like to do competency recovery in K-8. That's something that's happening at the high school level, but what are the additional opportunities, time, and support that we give to kids who aren't doing well? And what a great time for it to happen. We have funding, we have resources. We can transform how we do that here and build in supports for kids. But we have to have an entry point to get into the work. So that's step one. And step two, we've already had that conversation. I'm committed to finding out where kids are with student achievement. It's the first goal, and we're going to know by October where the kids are. So with that and these supports, I really don't see there's anything we can't do. We just need the opportunity to go and do the work, engage the constituents, and then bring back a recommendation to the board and say, this is what everybody said. Now, it's not going to go perfectly. There are going to be people who don't agree or disagree, but I do think there's a number of people who are looking for us to kind of say what we're all about and be consistent K-12 and not be jumping from grading systems or jumping through requirements and just really getting to a place of saying, this is what the school district is really about. This is what we want for graduates. And then I've been looking at the last top 10, 25 graduates from last year and where they go to school. This system produces quality graduate students that go on to do great things in college and career. So we're just asking for the opportunity to outline all that in a pathway so we can show everybody where it goes. If college is not for you, we have all these CTE programs where you can go out, be credentialed and licensed, and walk into a job making more than I made in my first teaching job. So this is a huge investment in the future of the district. I'm just asking for the opportunity to begin the work because it's just amazing what could happen if we can bring everybody around the table and have a conversation. I'm not saying it's not going to be, argumentative. You have to have that exchange, but I do think it's an important opportunity. I met with a student, graduated from Georgetown in COVID, was on the original competency-based learning committee at high school, and he talks about this as being a great preparation for college because it's all about what you know. You just have to produce what you know. It's not the numbers game. It's not the traditional doing school and jumping through hoops. It's about learning and moving forward. So there's a lot of amazing opportunities in here. I'm just asking for the chance to go kind of dive in and do the work. And it'll be messy, but I think on the other end, I think we're all going to be happy with the result.
Well, I'm glad you explained it because this way it's in the minutes of the meeting and anybody who's watching tonight and get the chance to hear what we're planning to do here in the district and how to move our students forward. And I'm glad that, you brought up about students don't want to go on to college. We have the CTE program here because there are a lot of students that don't want to go on, and we have to also take a look at them and what are they going to do in their life. And again, I hate to bring it up, but when I was on the board the last time, I talked about that, and I wanted to see one school more as a technical school. So we had but I was voted against. It was like 8-1, like always. But I'm kind of used to that. But it's good. We give our students different opportunities here in the district that if they want to go on, but they want to try hands-on or some other type of career training, that they have that opportunity prior to seeing if they want to go on to college. Thank you very much, Dr. McKinney.
All right. Thank you for all the comments. Actually, I have one follow-up question kind of down the lines of what Ms. Giglio asked, just to get a detail, and I think this was really a valuable exchange right here, so thank you guys both. It says leadership on this calendar many, many times, which is great. Are those going to be different groups of people, or is that always going to be the same group of people because that would be a lot of time out of one classroom for an individual teacher? It looks like the rest of the things on the calendar are limited to just a few days or once or twice a month. So is that like a single group that's following the leadership curriculum thing, or?
Could you just point me to a page number? So I
Oh,
can have the right
the
context?
calendar on the back page.
So when it says that, it doesn't mean we're pulling teachers out of the building. It means, again, the PD is coming to them. The NHLI team comes to the schools, it meets with the principals, sits in on PLCs and sees how's it running, how can it improve, what are they doing well, how can they get coaching in real time in what they're doing. It's really about supporting the building leaders and the kind of teacher leaders in the building in what they're doing. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. Instead of pulling them out of a classroom and sending them to a workshop, they're coming to them and supporting them right there. This is what they do. So I'm hoping it's kind of a happy compromise. And we just need, again, I don't know if I've been in summer admin, I feel like I say the same things to many people. We have 8 to 10 new APs and principals, and we have 8 to 10 new administrators or directors at the district office. We give teachers 2 to 3 days of new teacher orientation. We don't help the admin. So I'm asking that we help and support them because their jobs are just as important right behind the teachers in helping us get through difficult times. So this is an investment in them as much as it is in the teachers.
That's great to hear. So when it says leadership, it's actually targeting the administrators at those individual schools. The PD is coming to them. They're not having to leave to go to a class. And just to clarify, it looks like we have 3 staff members that are going to be providing coaching. So I'm guessing maybe they'll be targeting, for example, Bicentennial one day and Maine Dunstable another day. Okay, so that's what I was actually looking for. So thank you for the clarification. Thank you very much. All right. Everyone all set? All right, so I guess I move to recommend to approve the contract for services with NHLI funded by the ESSER 2 grant pending approval from the New Hampshire DOE.
Second.
All right, Ms. Raymond?
Yes.
Ms. Gilio?
Yes.
Jessica Brown votes yes, motion passes. All right, does anyone else have anything they'd like to bring before the committee this evening? Nope. All right, so I guess I move to adjourn.
Second.
Seconded by Ms. Gilio. And just for the sake of time, we'll do a group vote. All right, yes, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. There we go. We are adjourned at 7:02. Thank you very much.